What's up, everybody? This is the PlayStation Lifestyle Underground Podcast. We are an unofficial podcast of PlayStationLifestyle.net. I am Hugo Stiglitz. You can find me on PSN as Hugo Stiglitz _420. Today we're doing a two-man podcast. You want to say hi, Steve?
Yeah, sure. My name is Steve Bitto. I'm the community manager for PlayStation Lifestyle. You can find me on the forums as Steven Bitto, and find me on PlayStation Network as TYLERxDURDEN.
Awesome. And lately I've been playing a lot of stuff like usual. Mostly Fallout 4 for the past couple of days since it came out. Really enjoying it so far. We're gonna talk about it quite a bit for later in the podcast. But also, I played a lot of Black Ops 3 over the weekend. I played the whole campaign, played some multiplayer, some zombies, even some of the free run mode. It's a very good game. It's trying to make time for both games, but it's tough. Also, Project Cars, not as much as usual due to the the games that have been out, but still one of my favorites. Dying Light. Wasn't able to finish it before Fallout or Black Ops came out, but I'm still going to be playing it, and it's a great game. Still playing it off and on. And that's about it for PS4. On the Vita, I've actually been doing a lot of remote play. Played Fallout 4 for the first couple days, but I ended up running out of data on my cell phone, so at least for a few days I'm not going to be able to do any remote play. So I tried out Broken Age. There's some things that are really good about it, but there's some things I really didn't like. Like it's surprisingly, it's like a point and click adventure type thing, and it's surprising how confusing some things can be. Like it's a little annoying actually. You shouldn't. I don't know. Maybe it's a normal thing for the point and click genre, but having to getting stuck often does not seem like the type of thing that would make it a fun game for me, and I am getting stuck already, which is annoying. Like it's like I feel like that type of game should be, you want to play it for the story mostly, and it's kind of turning into like a puzzle, but it's very like archaic. I don't know.
Right.
It's my first time I've ever played any point and click games, so maybe I'm just an idiot when it comes to these games, but like very quickly in the game I'm already stuck, and it's pretty annoying. So I ended up trying out Super Meat Boy, and that's very good. It's a very addictive platformer. Very intuitive controls. It's very, very challenging, but it's like quick restarts. It almost kind of reminds me of Trials in that you try to make your way through. If you screw up, you restart, and it's like instant. And the cool thing is they have this replay feature where it'll show you every attempt that you made through the replay. So you'll see a bunch of little meat boys. They're all dying in different spots depending on where you died, It's a pretty cool feature. Like I don't know if any platformer has done that sort of thing before, but I think it's really cool. So I've only played like the first chapter of that, but I will play more of that. A little surprised at how fun that is. It's a little addictive. But
Right.
That's about it for me.
Last weekend I knocked out Uncharted 2. I really wanted to beat all three before Fallout got here, but unfortunately, I didn't have the time. And then I started playing Fallout 4 today. And then, obviously, I won't talk too much about it. I am enjoying it, but I do have my issues with it too. But we'll get into that here in the podcast.
Cool. So we'll dive into Fallout 4 now. I am actually really enjoying it. I think I've mentioned before I tried to get into Fallout New Vegas and couldn't do it. Part of it was, the fact that I was playing it on PC. I'm not a fan of PC, as I've mentioned before. I can play it on like quick spurts, like a 10-hour campaign, stuff like that. I have no problem with it, but as far as like putting a significant amount of hours into it, I just don't enjoy being on PC. I just really enjoy PS4 as a platform. So that was part of the reason, but really the biggest reason is just look, I just didn't enjoy the game. Like the color palette was horribly ugly. It's just all brown and just nasty. It just wasn't an environment I wanted to be in. That is not the story at all for Fallout. So it's like immediately that's the first thing that struck me about Fallout 4 is, I mean, the color palette is so much better. The way it's presented is so much more cinematic. I mean, I also love that your character, the protagonist, actually speaks, which is to me a big deal. I never like games that have silent protagonists. I just never have liked them, and I think it's a big step in the right direction for them to have one that does. Because it just like the overall presentation is just so much more, cinematic and more modern. Like I mentioned, the voice acting is great. The music is awesome. Well, I'll say the voice acting is great for a Bethesda game, because from what I've played before, their games not very good. This seems like a step up. But yeah, like I was saying, the graphics. A lot of people, made a lot of fuss about it. I think it looks really good. Like, I mean, it looks like a last-gen game running on PC at max settings. But it's still pretty. Like, sometimes that's all I need. Like, it actually has good image quality. Like, there's not a lot of jaggies, aliasing is the term for it, but there's not a lot of jaggies on stuff, and I think that's really nice. Like, I mean, it's not the best looker, but I mean, sometimes I'd rather have a game be 1080p with, really good anti-aliasing, which is what this game has, than instead of having like crazy flashy modern looking effects and shitty image quality. Because I feel like that type of stuff sometimes gets in the way of gameplay. That's not the case with this. They have some cool like weather effects. I don't know if you've seen a thunderstorm yet, but they're actually pretty cool. And the lighting is pretty good. It's nothing crazy, but it's nice, and just overall, I really like the art style of it, and it's a world that I really like being in, and not just because it's in Boston, which is where I'm from, basically. So it's just a really cool environment, and that's one thing that has me sold on the game already, and I'm just really looking forward to playing more because of that. So you've played a lot more of the previous Fallout games, though, so...
Right, so I played Fallout 3 and Fallout New Vegas, and I think that may be why we kind of have a different perspective on the graphics, because it looks exactly like Fallout 3 and New Vegas. Like, it looks like it could literally be just, a like half sequel, or like when I started playing, I thought it looks like a Fallout 3 expansion. So that's why I just felt like it looks. I really did feel like it looked really bad when I started playing, and I've gotten used to it, and I appreciate, like you said, that there's no like bad textures or bad like jaggy stuff. Like looking back, they like overestimated how good they could do. I was just thinking of something else. With the characters, I'm kind of conflicted on whether or not I like the modern approach to the dialogue, because I do like it a lot, and I think it works better. But what I hate about it is that, like, before, when you talk to somebody, it would stop the action and go right into the dialogue choices, and that, like, it was immediately evident that you were in a dialogue scenario, right? But now, everybody you speak to, it doesn't go in right away. The first thing they say is something not restricted by your movement and actions. So, multiple times already, I talk to somebody, I don't actually know that we're going into a conversation, and it messes up the flow of the game, because the computer character thinks I'm stopping for a dialogue. I'm running along thinking that, okay, that didn't trigger a branching dialogue, so it's not important. It's just they're just saying the same thing that they keep saying. So that screwed me up a couple of times, because it's not as polished as it needs to be. Like I like the idea that both characters have voices and both um, don't have big text boxes across the screen. I think that's good, but at the same time, I wish they kept the fact that dialogue is kind of like a separate part of the game other than the actual run and gun gameplay. Because I think by trying to put them together, neither one works as good, and they don't work well together.
Hmm.
Um,
I mean, I know
what
what
else
you
did I
mean, where
notice?
like they'll talk if you come near them, and you're not really sure if they're starting dialogue. But I think that the new dialogue system actually works a lot better. I never really liked that they stopped the action and gave you that huge text box. I think it's good now because I mean, once you're in an actual dialogue situation, it's pretty obvious because they put the button prompts on the screen. Well, most of the time, there's been some glitches where I've had that they didn't put the button prompts on the
Yeah,
screen.
that's kind of what I'm saying
Um,
is they don't come up right away sometimes, and then you don't know, and then it kind of
that's a
screws up the dialogue.
that's a glitch. Like that has to be a glitch where they just don't even, because sometimes it'll be at like the end of a conversation that all of a sudden I'll have no dialogue options, but it's clearly waiting for me to respond. In
Right.
that case, I usually just hit X. X is usually the positive response. Circle's usually negative. Square can be sarcastic or random, and then I forget what triangle is. But in those cases, I hit. But it has to be a glitch. Like I don't think they designed it like that. No way. No chance. Especially because, like I said, it could be at the end of a conversation, which it just makes no sense for them to randomly give you zero choices. Like I think it's just
Right.
one of the many bugs that Bethesda is known for in their games. But overall, I like the dialogue better. But it can be annoying that like sometimes you want to go talk to a guy to ask him something, and they just put you right into the trading part of it. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, I didn't want to trade. I wanted to like ask him something, or tell her to take care of the garden and this and that because you're supposed to do that. And like I haven't actually been able to tell someone to take care of it. I don't know if they're automatically doing it or if I've been doing it myself.
Yep.
But like I've been trying to talk to her, and every time it just goes to the trading thing. So that's a little annoying. But as far as like when you're actually having dialogue, I actually like it a lot better, especially because you're actually talking instead of just selecting text responses. I feel like it was so much more boring before. Now it's actually like a real conversation. And yeah, like it would be nice to be a little more streamlined with some things though. Like I'd say definitely the whole building aspect of it is one of them. Like the menu could be a little better, and also the way that you walk around while you're going through the menu. I wish it would be a little more uh, polished as far as the way they map the buttons. Because normally when you're going through the menu, you hit circle to go back, but if you're
Right.
looking at something, it'll you hit circle and it'll try to store it in your workshop, which is annoying. But what's even more annoying is the fact that you can't just hit circle again to get out of that. You have to select no, then hit X, and then just look at something else while you try to hit circle. To do a lot of things in the menu, you have to look away from objects in the settlement in order to actually go through the menu. Because if you're looking at something and you hit X, it'll try to pick it up. So it's pretty annoying. Like I think that
Right.
they could have been a little smarter with how they mapped the buttons for that sort of stuff to avoid those type of conflicts. So you can still go through the menu without doing something you don't want to do. Because right now you pretty much have to look away from every object, which can be hard to do if you're inside of a house or just near one. You have to look to a spot where there isn't an object that you can reach and touch. Like so, it's
It's
otherwise,
really
I think it is cool, like the
I
whole
think it's
building thing.
pretty
But
confusing that they didn't address these things ahead of time. It seems like they're all pretty obvious, and it's the type of thing that it had to come up in testing, play testing. I mean,
yeah, I don't
it's
know. Yeah,
just it's so obvious and it's unavoidable.
yeah, and I don't get
So
why. Like, it seems like some game companies are just so ass backwards when it comes to button mapping. It's like there are clear, intuitive ways to map a controller. I think, it seems like a lot of game developers just don't even put that much effort into it, and I think this is one of those examples. Although, like as far as like all the regular gameplay actions, you can remap any button in Fallout except for the analog sticks.
Right.
So thank God I'm playing on a PS4 because I do actually swap them. But it's like when I play remote play, I can't do that. Like I'm stuck playing default, so obviously I'm not able to aim as well. So
Right.
it's just like one of those. So it is kind of cool that they let you map most of the buttons, just not that one. I mean, that doesn't. The sticks don't really affect most people, but it's just like another huge game in addition to Metal Gear Solid 5, where it's like I'm able to enjoy it so much more thanks to PS4 having that option to swap any button and the sticks. Like it
Exactly.
it's like it's such a lifesaver for me personally, and I'm sure there's other people like handicap people that need it. And it's like it's gonna probably keep happening this generation where a game's gonna come out and be like, oh my god, thank God I'm playing this on PS4. Like, because it really is a game changer for me. Like it just makes games so much more enjoyable. But back to Fallout, yeah, it just seems weird that they would leave it the way it is.
Of building stuff in your camp in the sanctuary, I think that's a genius addition because it seems like building encampments and like starting like kind of like a little colony that in a post-apocalyptic game it just makes so much sense. Like that's like everyone's like drive to survive. That's what it is in every post-apocalyptic anything. That's what the people are trying to do. They're trying to build colonies, meet other people they can trust, and survive. So the fact now that you can do it yourself, I mean, that's genius. It was a fantastic addition to the game.
Definitely.
Yeah, and it like you said, it's kind of not alarming, but strange that they wouldn't have spent more time just making that more intuitive and working a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, because it really would be incredibly easy just to map those functions to different buttons. Because there's plenty of buttons that aren't being used that are, totally within reach, and they could have mapped those things to make it, much more intuitive, but they didn't. I don't know. I don't know how, but
especially because it's a mode that's been done so many times and every game. This is not like creating a little colony or building things is nothing new. I mean, it should be so obvious how to do this like correctly, but and who knows? Maybe they'll fix it in an update or something.
Yeah.
But
it's like I could see if it was something like bigger, like functionality wise, but it's just button mapping. Like that is so easy to get right to me. Like to me, button mapping is like the last thing you should be getting wrong. Like but it's like I said, like it seems like a lot of developers seem to be very half-assed with button mapping, and I have no idea why. Like it seems like they just don't think things out, and they just kind of expect people to deal with whatever they give them. And I think this is one of those cases.
There's also something to be said for developers that work on a game for so long that they don't remember what it's like to pick it up and play it the first time.
True, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this might be one of those scenarios where they were unable to see it from like a newcomer's perspective by the end. So they didn't really like pick up on the fact that some of these things were not intuitive like whatsoever, because to them it was second nature.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's one of those things where they just give you whatever they give you, and then people just kind of get used to it. I think that could have been what happened to them, because early in development, I don't know if they're worrying too much about button mapping. They just want to get the game working and test it out. But yeah, it is kind of a little crazy that something so simple, they could have easily mapped those two functions to different buttons to avoid the problems that we're having, but they haven't. But I don't want to be like negative towards the game, because overall I'm very happy with Fallout 4. I think they've improved the shooting quite a bit. Like it feels so much more like a modern shooter. It's still not like super modern. It still is quite challenging, the shooting, but it feels good, and it's like when you want to shoot someone quickly and not use VATS, you can do it. Like it's not like super hard, and the guns are a little bit inaccurate, but not super inaccurate. The other cool thing is that guns don't wear down over time, so it's like you don't have to repair your guns. I'm happy about that. But one feature that they did, they didn't make more casual is the whole inventory system, where you have a set amount of weight that you can carry. Once you go past that a little bit, you can drink alcohol to be able to still sprint and stuff. But if you go too far past it, you walk at basically crawling pace. Like, you know how there's the stealth mode, you crouch down,
right,
and you walk? It's basically that speed. If you go over the weight limit, that's how fast you walk. And I had to walk from Lexington all the way back to Sanctuary. It took so long because of that. Because I picked up a Fat Man and Power.
That's very common with Bethesda games. It's being over encumbered is it's a common thread from Skyrim, Fallout 3, New Vegas, Oblivion. It works the same way in those games too. You just have to basically drop stuff that you may not want to, but you just have to do it to get back under the weight you can carry.
Yeah. I kind of just hate the whole idea of playing a game and having to stop playing to go through an inventory. Like, it just annoys me. I mean,
inventory management
it is a little easy so far. It's been a little easy because, I'll be picking up multiple pipe pistols and you don't even need them. Like, you can just toss them all, and they do weigh the most. But, sometimes it gets a little more complicated. Like, if you pick up, what I did, which was I found power suit pieces and a Fat Man. So it's obviously I'm not going to leave those, but I'm also not going to drop a minigun either, which is another heavy thing I had that would have helped me. So it's I was basically stuck walking all the way back to Sentry at that slow snail pace, because you also can't fast travel if you have too much stuff on you. So it's just I don't like it when it takes away from the actual playing of the game. Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl on PC has similar issue, which was one of the reasons I kind of stopped playing it. It is a really cool game, and it's kind of similar to Fallout because it's post-apocalyptic. There are mutants. The guns aren't super accurate, and you do have the whole inventory thing. But one of the main problems is it's on PC, and you have to use keyboard and mouse, so that's one of the reasons I couldn't get super into it. It's a very good game, though. But yeah, it just reminds me of Fallout 4, but you're dealing with your inventory when you could be playing the game. It is cool, because it makes it a little more realistic. It makes the game a little more challenging, but I feel like it can kind of take away from gameplay sometimes, and yeah, I don't know. I think I could do without it. I think it would be cool if you play it on easier difficulties, they give you the ability to carry more stuff, but on harder difficulties, then they had it the way it is now. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I think it would make replaying the game a little more interesting, I suppose. But I just kind of wish that there was some options as far as carrying more stuff, other than building pockets into your armor or upgrading your stats, your perks or whatever to carry more stuff. Because it doesn't. Each one of those things, they don't add that much on to the weight limit. They add a little bit, but not a whole lot. So it's kind of like a half measure. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's I've only been playing. I haven't made it even into Boston yet. It's I'm still, kind of just in the countryside and in Lexington and Concord and stuff. So it's I can only imagine what it's going to be like in Boston. Although maybe you'll have a hideout in Boston to use to store away stuff, so maybe you won't have to go as far as you do. Although one thing I did notice is when I was in Lexington, I killed one of those ghouls, and I put a bunch of stuff. I transferred a bunch of stuff to loosen some of the weight, and it was still there when I went back like hours later.
Oh,
So it's
really?
like I don't. Yeah, like I know they say it's a persistent world. You drop something, it's still gonna be there. But I don't know. I didn't want to risk it with like a minigun or something. But I
Yeah.
think that like you can actually stash stuff in places and it'll still be there when you get back. Like I don't know if it'll ever disappear. Um, but it's like I said, I didn't want to risk it with a minigun. Although now I have 3 of them, so maybe I could have. But at the time,
Yeah.
I only had
You
like
can
2. And...
100% like store stuff at Sanctuary. I know that much.
Oh yeah, that'll be
Yeah, I
safe.
don't know.
Yeah.
And I think you might be able to store stuff on people and it'll always be there.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of how it was in the old ones too. It wasn't like every like dead body you could do, but I think if you did it like in a cupboard or something, it would still be there.
Oh, speaking of dead bodies, one good thing they did change from the old Fallout to the new ones is now if you go up to a dead body or even just like a cabinet, you see the items that are in it. Like now you don't have
Right.
to open a menu to look at what was in that cabinet and then decide if you want to take the stuff. You see it immediately as soon as you look at it, which is I think just an awesome addition. I mean, it streamlines the gameplay a bit more. Like
I'm having a
I'm a
lot of
big fan of
trouble with
that.
that myself as a fan of the old Skyrims and Fallouts. I keep hitting circle every single time
Oh
to
yeah,
back out of
yep.
the menu, and you're not in a menu like
See, I
literally.
didn't even
So
I didn't even really play those, but I just hit circle as I'm just used to hitting circle to get out of like certain things like that. But really, you just have to look away. So I've done that a few times, but I'm quickly getting used to it. So not a huge problem. Oh man, I had something else I wanted. Oh, you can transfer stuff to your companion, like dog meat and stuff, and like they can carry stuff. Though, one thing is if you transfer like a weapon, like an RPG or a fat man, the companion might use it. Not dog meat, but apparently, if you give it to like Preston or one of the other, companions that you can use, they might shoot the fat man at an enemy that is right next to you and kill you. Like. So that's
that's no
one other
good.
negative about the game is the AI is incredibly dumb. The companion AI, it's really stupid. Like, there's been times that like dog meat got lost or dog meat couldn't, make it through a path that he could easily just walk right through. It's a little annoying and a little discouraging because it's like you want to be able to use these companions, but if they're that much of a liability, it's just like, man. It's almost not even worth it. And the other thing is, it's like them just getting themselves hurt, and then you have to waste a stim pack on them because they weren't smart enough to, go away when they're getting hurt. Like they'll just attack the biggest enemy. Like dog meat, that early battle with the death claw, dog meat will just go attack the death claw. Like he'll just go right up to him and start biting him. I got lucky that dog meat didn't get incapacitated when I was doing that fight. But it's like there's been other times where he went up to turrets and just got shot to bits and immediately, incapacitated. And, that was that. Like, I had to kill the turret and revive him. And it's just like, you end up wasting stim packs that way. And so,
Right.
I don't know. Hopefully they can patch some stuff, but I'm not sure what they're going to be doing on patching. I really do hope they support it a lot, though, because it really does need some work. Speaking of which, frame rate. The frame rate is not the greatest. In most areas and like outdoors, I've been fine. Like maybe the occasional hiccup, but for the most part, it's pretty much perfect 30 FPS. But when I got into the assembly plant at first, it was quite a lot bad. Like frame rate drops. And hopefully there's less of that in other areas. Because, when I did get to the ground floor of that area, it went away. But, yeah, it is a concern. And considering how the graphics are, like I mentioned, it looks like a last-in game on, better hardware. This really shouldn't be having any frame rate problems. But that just shows that it's either that their engine is horrible, or they are horrible when it comes to optimization. Because there's just no excuse for a game that looks the way it does. It's clearly based on last gen tech. There's no excuse for it to be running the way it does on PS4.
Right, I agree. I think it's an engine issue, but see, I cut him some slack on PS3 because of the cell processor. It's not an easy thing to not only program for, but move something else that's already been programmed on PC or even Xbox 360 onto the cell processor. That was difficult. So I cut him some slack for things that didn't run quite right off the bat. But now, like on PS4, when it's very simplified as far as hardware, it just is like a kind of like a PC that runs better, I guess, than the PS3 and 360.
Yeah.
But I don't really cut him much slack this time around. I'm actually pretty frustrated with some of the technical issues. And the frame rate has been one of them. I've had a couple little issues with that. Nothing as bad as I had on PS3. There'd be like in New Vegas, even though I guess Obsidian developed that, but it was the same engine. There was missions, like final missions, that it would slow down to literally like 0 frames per second. I would have to sit and wait for it to get through. And there's the only way to beat these final missions was to wait for like 20 minutes just to get through a couple like seconds of gameplay past whatever hiccup there was. It was terrible.
Oh, I don't know. I was going to mention Xbox One actually has that problem. Like, it does drop to 0 FPS, but not that bad. Not where you're having to wait 20 minutes just to get through a couple of frames.
It was terrible. And it was like one of the final missions, too, so that there was no way you couldn't like skip it.
Damn. Yeah, no, that sucks. The Xbox version is kind of like the PS3 version this gen, and it's been like that with a lot of games. But like it stutters a lot. It's got the stuttering problem. It also drops the frame rate a lot more often and lower than the PS4 version. But also, like I mentioned, the 0 FPS. Like when it drops to 0 FPS, that same point the PS4 runs it at 28 FPS. So it's like I was worried before launch that Bethesda's always kind of favored Microsoft quite a bit. It's Xbox, and so I was like a little worried. I was like, this better not be one of those games that are like clearly parody. Just because Microsoft, just for the parody's sake, didn't end up being the case for the most part. But it's like I was worried about that, but it's actually running pretty bad on Xbox One. Apparently, it is fixable though. Supposedly, like you can fix the stutter if you have an SSD, and you can get rid of that F0 FPS drop with like a better hard drive.
I saw
apparently.
that today as well.
Yeah. On PS4, we don't have either of those two issues, so better hard drive will just give you better loading times, which isn't really a huge issue. Like, if you're reloading older saves, sometimes it can take a little long, but it's not like a huge problem, because most of the time you don't have to load, except for when you go into indoor areas, and a lot of the times those loading times are pretty quick, depending on the size of the area. But I think, overall they did a pretty bad job optimizing the game. I mean, it is 1080p, but like we mentioned, the way it looks and the frame rate issues, it's kind of disappointing to see, like, especially when you compare it to a game that just came out 2 months ago, Metal Gear Solid 5, which is like a shining example. Like, it's pretty much a benchmark on the PS4 because it looks incredible. And it's perfect 60 FPS and 1080p. It's just like it's night and day comparing that game to this one. And it's like, although like I mentioned, I do actually really like the way the Fallout 4 looks. I think it's beautiful. It's just that like they clearly could have done better with the way the game is and like the way it looks. I don't see any reason why they couldn't have done 60 FPS unless the engine is really that bad, or unless they just put that little effort into optimization. it could be either. It's probably the engine because
Yeah.
it is an old one,
I
but
feel like, yeah, it's got to be the engine. It just feels like the engine is so crippling at times to what they're trying to do. Um, I think if they would have went for that, the 60 frames, you would have had a lot more problems more often, you know?
yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure, like, because they have to put so much effort into the other parts of the game. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they put just no effort into optimizing the games for each format. Like, because the PC version's also having problems, and it just seems like all their games are pretty unoptimized. And it's like, I know like they put a lot of effort and like it's a massive task to make the rest of the game. Um, but it's still they should be putting more effort into optimizing the game or making a better engine. Like if the engine is the problem, they should not be using the same engine still. Maybe it's because like they initially planned to put Fallout 4 on the last gen consoles, so maybe that's why they stuck with that shitty engine.
It's
Um,
possible.
and hopefully, Fallout 5 or whatever comes out after this actually uses a modern engine because they're getting shown up big time by games like The Witcher 3 and Metal Gear Solid 5, like multi-platform games, big open worlds, RPGs, and it's like they look like they're lagging behind big time. Not in game quality, but it's just as far as like the technical stuff. Um, but for me, the technical stuff has not. It's been it's there, but it's not at all what I've been focusing on. Like I've actually, like I said, I've been really enjoying myself. But this is my first time I've really got into a Fallout game. So it's like, although we are mentioning the negative stuff, overall my experience is extremely positive. Really, really enjoying it. I wouldn't say it's a contender for Game of the Year for me. I still think Metal Gear Solid 5 has that hands down, but this is definitely a clear runner-up for me. It's really, really good game so far, and I can't wait to get further into the story and all the side missions and stuff. Although it's like I don't even know if I've got any side missions. Do you know how do they have like a separate distinction on what a side mission is in your little quest thing on the Pip-Boy?
No, I think they kind of all group together.
Oh.
I'm trying to think. It's always hard to tell which are the kind of meatier side missions as opposed to the, kind of fetch quests, like simple stuff.
Uh-huh.
It all kind of blends together, but there are ones that are going to be more substantial and maybe more like something you'd see in The Witcher, not just simple fetch quests. Which I didn't actually play The Witcher. I wish I did, but
yeah,
there's only so much time in the day.
Yeah, same here. I definitely am gonna get it at some point. But yeah, no, I unfortunately didn't have enough time for it. It does look like an awesome game, and it's like I have played a little bit, enough to know that the gameplay is good. Like the combat, I mean, is really, really good, which I think is very, very important for that kind of game. It's like one of the reasons I couldn't get into Skyrim is because I just didn't enjoy the combat, and thankfully that's not the case with The Witcher at all. The combat is very rewarding and fun. Kind of like Batman, Arkham Knight in those games. Good stuff. But yeah, definitely really enjoying the game now. So you've played other Fallouts. Are you still able to enjoy the game despite all the shortcomings, or are you kind of still trying to get into it?
See, it's tough because I come at it from the perspective of everything that's come before, and then also seeing the way people are reviewing it has frustrated me quite a bit because I feel like almost every excerpt I read on Metacritic was basically sounded like they were disappointed, but they give it like a 9. And on one hand, I understand that it still is a good game. It still does a lot of things great. It still presents like good story, good writing, like a world you want to get kind of lost in. But I feel like the shortcomings at this point in the game really should have dragged it down way more. This game should be a 7.5 because it has a lot of the parts of a good game, but it doesn't nail enough, and especially comparing it to old ones where some of these things were excusable because they were like the first time like this massive world was on, a PS3, a home console. Those things are not excusable anymore, especially when you have games like The Witcher, Bloodborne, and Metal Gear Solid doing so much better in some of these departments. Yeah, I really think some of these things are just inexcusable. Like even the third person shooting is better, but I mean it's just not even close to what it really should be in this day and age. You should be able to nail that. It should be really simple. You should not need VATS whatsoever. But you really, the reason why VATS is there is because you can't shoot people often enough. When you have shortage of ammo, you can't be wasting 3 clips trying to hit a guy that's not that far away.
Well, I think that's part of just what the game is, though. Like the shooting, not being able to shoot people as easily as you can in like an Uncharted type game, or like I think that's part of like what the game is because although your character was in the army, you're not an epic like amazing marksman. You're not Jack Bauer, and you're using these cruddy like makeshift weapons too. So I kind of feel like
in the previous games you are though, like at the end of the game, like you save the entire colony or world, you are like the guy. Like in New Vegas, you kill like the leader of the entire I can't remember the name of it now, but the entire like army, like the general of the entire like military force. It's like a rebel military force, but you like are the guy that's able to take him down. So you are like, and I guess by the end of the game you can't hit people with bats, but I don't know. I do have a problem with it. I think it should be better. I think it should be a lot better because, really, it's been done before, and there are ways to polish it up quite a bit, I'd say. But I'm having a hard time getting past the disappointment and appreciating it for the game that it is. But I think we kind of talked a little bit before the podcast, and I think these are things I'll probably get over as the game goes on. I'm going to be able to more appreciate things just for what they are. Because right now I'm comparing it to everything I've just played before. And even like graphically, I just finished Uncharted 2. And even though it's a remaster, it is a linear game, so it's going to look better. But it's
way better.
I still have a problem that it shouldn't look that much better. Because it looks way better than this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a PS3 game, so, and it's really not that new a PS3 game. It's probably, how old's Uncharted 2 now? 5, 6 years old?
2009. So it's almost 7 years.
Six, almost 7. So, I'm having a hard time getting past the shortcomings, although I am beginning to get into the flow of the game and enjoy the story for what it is. And the improvements, like you said, the voice acting and the dialogue and the cinematic nature of it, I'm beginning to enjoy that and look past kind of the aesthetic of it all. But initially, it was pretty jarring.
Yeah, I think it's one of those examples of me being like a graphics whore, but not, because I'm actually fine with the graphics. Because like I mentioned before, the things I care most about are the image quality, like the clarity of the graphics, the color palette, and just the overall art style. So I'm actually fine with the graphics, although it clearly is, like I said, to me it looks like a last-gen game, just on better hardware. And though, like you mentioned, Uncharted 2 looks way better. Even Uncharted 1 remastered looks way better. But it doesn't bother me too much because I'm pretty easy to please once those three things I mentioned are good in a game, like the art style, the image quality, and the color palette. Like I mentioned, like to me the color palette killed New Vegas to me, and some other games, even Black Ops 1, which is like one of my favorite shooters. The color palette was horrible in that game. Like it was just so ugly. I'm just not a fan of ugly color palettes. Like, I feel like there's ways to make a game like post-apocalyptic and grungy without making it ugly. You know what I mean? And I think they've done that with Fallout. Like, it's definitely clearly looks like everything is run down and rusty and grungy, but it's still very pleasant to look at and more realistic to look at as well. Like, I think that New Vegas, it doesn't even look like real, like a real post-apocalyptic world would look like. So it's like same thing with 3. I think 3 might have been even worse, like as far as the like monotone color palette goes. And just not a fan of that. So it's like I guess I'm lucky to not have gone into the other two because I'm very happy with Fallout 4. Like I'm actually pleasantly surprised at how good it is. But I don't have those previous experiences. I think so
that's
far
something
I
I
think it's much
noticed
better.
immediately as well. Just for me, it was the existence of so many trees, even though most of them are dead. Just seeing so much more foliage and like just stuff, like kind of littering the landscape. Because like you said, New Vegas, there are parts where it's just desert, just flat desert for a long way. Now
and it's just like brown
trees,
desert.
you have buildings,
Doesn't even look
you
like a
have
real
everything,
desert.
Around it. It does make everything more pleasant. It looks more like a real environment, more like a breathable environment. So I agree. That's a good point.
Yeah, and it's like it's not even like that the textures are better. Like, I mean, they probably are, but they're still kind of ugly. But it's just the color and the art design of everything is just so much more believable and more attractive. Like, without being like unrealistic. It's definitely a subtle thing, I'd say, for most people, but for me it's actually quite a big deal. Like a color palette can really change the way I look at a game. Like a good example is the Crysis series. Although like Crysis 3 is clear and 2 are clearly more advanced graphically than Crysis 1, Crysis 1 is my favorite one to look at because of the color palette is just so much better than the other two. Like the other two kind of were doing this kind of stylized, like more saturated and dark color palette. I don't even, and I just wasn't into it. Like I think color palette is like something that's very, very important in games. So it's nice to see that they got it right for this one. And it's just like one of those things that make the game more accessible to me personally, and probably more other like casual gamers that maybe haven't got into Fallout before. I think people like me I might be more inclined to get into this one than the other ones, and not just because they're on last gen, just like the things I mentioned alone. It does seem like a little more casual overall because like this, like the guns not wearing down, the presentation and just the shooting. Like the shooting feels so much smoother and more intuitive than the other two. So it's like it definitely feels like they casualized it a little bit, but not all the way. Like you still have the inventory weight limit and stuff. So, yeah, overall I love the game, but like I said before, I still don't think it should win Game of the Year. Like even though it's very early, I just no matter how good the story is, I don't think it could be Game of the Year for me.
Yeah, I don't think it's even for me. It's not even in the discussion.
Yeah, I'd have to say so as well, just because Metal Gear Solid 5 is just so clearly head and shoulders above it as far as gameplay and the technical aspects. And it's like it's arguable for like the against The Witcher, I'd say, in like Bloodborne. Although it's like even those games almost look like they could be better. But so far,
See,
I don't know. So far, I would say that it's better than those two, but I'm not entirely sure. I haven't even played The Witcher,
though. You put those three games together, I think those two just do enough better in other departments. It's like, are they really on the same level? Like, one's built on that. You know what I mean? Like, I think Fallout 4 is a great game. It's about a 7.5 or an 8, but those are better. They're just better.
Yeah, I could see that. Like, I have to play more, and I actually have to play The Witcher. But so far, I actually do think I'd put Fallout 4 above Bloodborne and pretty much anything besides Metal Gear. But to me, Metal Gear is just so head and shoulders above the rest of the games this year. It's crazy. Also, I'd love to put Rocket League in the discussion too. It's like it's a very simple game, but it's just so fucking good. Like it's so much fun. And it's really like there's really something to be said about that. Like, a game that gets the gameplay and like in the fun aspects of it so well done that you could consider it game of year against games that are like just massive AAA like undertakings with 100-hour campaigns and stuff like. But that's how good I think Rocket League is. But with this podcast isn't about the game of year discussion. I just thought it was kind of obvious thing to mention because the other Fallouts have been nominated or won Game of the Years. So and a lot of people were expecting Fallout 4 to be Game of the Year, I think.
Right. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I think people kind of had that. I know a lot of people, basically, up until this point, every time I've heard someone mention Game of the Year, they kind of had the asterisk at the end saying that, but Fallout 4 is still going to come out in November,
Yeah. Yeah, everyone's been saying that. And it's like the whole time I've been saying, honestly, I gotta say Metal Gear Solid 5 is just so good. I cannot see a Fallout game, no matter how good of a Fallout game it was, beating it. But now that I'm actually playing Fallout 4, I actually am. I think it's actually better than I expected to be. Like, to be honest. But still, like I still think it falls short to Metal Gear, even with Metal Gear's problems. Like, I wouldn't say they're huge problems, but like it's quite a game, that Metal Gear Solid 5.
Yep.
But I don't know. You have anything else you wanna input?
No, not really. Just one thing I will kind of in closing is that despite the fact that I'm saying these things, I still haven't played the full story, which, obviously is going to factor in greatly to how good I think this game is. If it has a great story, obviously that'll change my mind a little bit one way or another. So I put a score on it. I probably shouldn't quite yet, but
yeah, I can't do that yet.
Yeah, I shouldn't have done that quite yet, but
I am leaning a little higher, though.
I am starting out disappointed, but I am aware that there's a lot more left to go, so we'll see where I'm at in, 30, 40, 50 hours.
Yeah, I'm a little bit the opposite. Like, I'm pleasantly surprised at how good it is and how much I'm enjoying it, so I guess I'm lucky in that aspect, but like for me to give it like a really high score, like a 9 or a 10, it would have to have like one of the best stories ever in gaming. I don't expect it to have that, but I am looking forward to the rest of the story. I do hear that it's very good, but people different opinions and stuff like it's like I also heard that Black Ops 3 had a great story and it didn't. It was kind of interesting, but it's just not not nearly as good as the first two story wise. But yeah, I think that's about it. We'll wrap it up here. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See ya.